I'll scoot
There you
out.
are. Theology by the book. Pastor Christian Herring, Pastor John Black. We're doing this for our church, but anybody wants to join in, they can. We're going through this book, which is Not Mirrored: Parenting by God's Promises by Dr. Joel Beeke. And we're getting close to the end of it here. We're on chapter 21.
Yeah.
There's one more chapter.
22 chapters.
And then there's we'll look at the conclusion and things and see. Surely Cotton Mather's parental resolutions in Appendix 1 will be interesting. And then Appendix 2, Children in the Church. Yeah, so we'll take a look at those. And then we're looking at doing maybe a Puritan classic that we can do together.
You keep talking. I'm going to look up the Puritan classic that I was thinking of. Okay? You do your thing. I'm going to look this up so I don't forget. But keep talking. Okay. I will engage as I can.
Okay. So I'll just say what I was going to say. Christian, what did you think of it? I'm just kidding because I
have lots of thoughts.
You're trying to multitask.
In general.
Well, go ahead and do what you're doing, and I'll introduce I'll read the Bible verses that he has in here to begin his helping teenagers resist negative peer pressure. So it says here, Galatians 2:11 through 13. But when Peter was come to Antioch, I withstood him to his face, because he was to be blamed. For before that certain came from James, he did eat with. Wait a minute. King James always throws me off a little. For before that certain men came from James, he did eat with the Gentiles, but when they were come, he withdrew and separated himself, fearing them which were of the circumcision. And the other Jews dissembled likewise with him, insomuch that Barnabas also was carried away with their dissimulation. And then also Daniel 3:16 through 18. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. So he uses these two verses. The Galatians passage is where Paul, and was it James as well, or Barnabas, said they wouldn't eat with the Gentiles because you weren't supposed to do that. And then some of the Jews of the circumcision party, which I always thought that's not the party you want to be invited to, but it's the circumcision party shows up, and they're the ones that are still saying, you keep the holiness codes, you shouldn't be eating with Gentiles. And so they fell into these old ways of doing things. So they felt kind of judged by these other Jews, and they decided to not eat with them. So it's like you're at the cafeteria, and you're not eating with the cool kids, and you're sitting there eating with these poor lowly children. Then the cool kids come in and see you there, and you're like, oh no, and you get up and walk away. And so Paul really has a problem with that, but he's using that as these guys are coming, and that's negative peer pressure. These are people that are coming in and causing you, who are doing the right thing, to stop doing the right thing because you didn't want to look bad in their eyes. And then the next is, would you agree with my little synopsis there? And then Daniel is, now the king has told them to do something, and they're going to stand up for righteousness regardless of the consequences. And so I think that's his point in bringing these guys out is, there are you fear God rather than man. And certainly Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are great examples of men who decided that they must obey God rather than man. And that's where it starts. Did you get done what you were looking to get done?
I'm working on it. If I can't find it right here, I'm going to quit.
Keep working. So then, page 249, and it's developing deep roots to resist peer pressure. And he starts off where he says that in this paragraph, Christians who are immature in the faith are blown about by the world's ideas as if by strong winds. And that's Ephesians 4:14. Any wind of doctrine, anything that just kind of, so you're mature in the faith, you're blown about like a sailboat on the water. And so our teenagers need to be rooted in Christ, so that when they begin to emerge from the shelter of our households, they will stand firm against false doctrines and wicked lifestyles. And he says there's a number of ways that we can help with that. But I did like that. It's the idea of any weak believer is going to have trouble, and we don't want our children leaving our homes being weak in the faith. We want them rooted in the faith. And it'll be an immature faith just because, anybody's maturity in the faith has to do with their maturity in life as well. So, I mean, if you're 6, you can have a 6-year-old mature faith. And if you're, 18, you're going to have an 18-year-old maturity of faith. But there are a lot of 18-year-olds who are more mature than a lot of 40-year-olds. So we take that into account too. Oh, you do a screen share.
This is the book I was thinking of.
Oh, yeah, that's the one everybody's doing now. Thoughts for Young Men. Well, it's the Canon Press thing, right? They like doing the well, I think it is. I mean, it's a Puritan classic, but I think, I could be wrong, but the artwork on the front, I think they repackaged these things. So, yeah, I've heard that's a good one as well. We'll check that one out. The other one I looked at too is see, Short is good too, and it's what is it? Devices of Satan. There's, what's it called? I can't remember who wrote it. It's against Satan's devices. Something about anyway. It's about spiritual warfare and how do we fight it against temptation and things like that. So, okay, but yeah, we have some ideas. Yes. So I need to do something real quick. So can you take the next, it won't tell me about a second, but can you pick up where we were? You see where that was? It's the very first tip he gives. I'm going to block out a second.
Being living examples of courageous integrity. I hope that's what he meant. So developing deep roots to resist peer pressure. And these are all excellent bits of advice, essential bits of advice. As I think he said throughout the entire book, or at least the message that we seem to have gotten from the entire book, or consistently in the book, is you gotta lead by example when it comes to raising your kids. And if we're not resisting the pressure of culture, because I think for parents, we certainly can have peer pressure. I don't dispute that whatsoever. But we also have tremendous pressure just from kind of the world as well. I mean, kids do too, but we are able to shield them from a lot of that. And so just at least in our culture, being kind of countercultural, intentionally, our life is going to be shaped and molded by God's design, by God's word, by God's purposes. And that, so for us, if you're in the homeschooling community, you're kind of, you that's sort of a built-in, you get to do that every day. Homeschooling, while it is growing by leaps and bounds, it still is, in some sectors, kind of looked down upon, like you're weirdos, why are you doing that? Or, you're doing something wrong, how dare you take away resources from the public schools, or whatever the case may be, or how,
sounds like you're hanging around the wrong people.
Well, no, I'm just saying that is out there.
That's some negative peer.
No.
What's going on? Well, so what do you do when you hear that? You jump up and leave the homeschoolers and you go straight to the public school, and you don't disassimilate. Is that the word he used?
Yeah, no,
Because you don't, yeah, disassimilate. You don't disassimilate. You have to. You're saying that is a very good example of adult peer pressure, to
yeah,
where
yeah.
you need to be able to stand up and say,
No, this is
yeah,
what we're doing, what we know to be right,
right,
and that pressure can come from family members who, are kind of not on board, or whatever. Uh,
yeah, and it's growing, and it's been around a long time now. So I mean, it's been,
yeah.
goodness, I don't know, 30, 40. It was a long time, but I think just
Well,
from
to
the
be fair,
80s, yeah.
it's
Well, it
actually
was the
the way
original,
it
right?
started.
Right,
Yeah.
you're right. It was the original way of
If
doing
we want to talk about the new kid on the block, it has to be
it.
the
Right. And not to get off on the subject, but I mean, there was good reason that, you see, that anyway, yeah, public
yeah.
education was a good idea. It's maybe still be a good idea in some ways, but when it begins to become what it's become, it can be a big problem. It's sort of
Yeah.
like, anyway. So yeah, I
That
think,
was not my intention. My intention
no,
was
no,
not to
no,
go
but
down that.
you had a good point. It's when the world kind of comes in, from different arenas. Well, and it can be the other way too. If you have your children in public school and you hang around a bunch of homeschool people, and they look
Sure.
down on you because, hey, look at you, you're standing here. So my take on that has been, each family has to decide, how to raise their children properly, and you're will be held accountable for it. And not only will you be held accountable, but you will reap the benefits of it one way or the other. You will reap
Mhm.
what you sow. So, if you just have to, each person has to do what they see as right. And second is reinforcing basic biblical concepts. And he talks about, teaching our children, one, that the glory of God's the greatest object of love, and that we live all of life coram Deo, which is Latin for before the face of God. And and trying to, that's a lofty concept. I think the, teaching anybody to live everything for the glory of God, and you're living all life before the face of God. And what does that mean when you're not trying to be legalistic? I don't want you to behave because you're afraid of God, but I want you to be, not afraid of what man can do, not afraid of circumstances, but you put, fear of God is that respect for God, that you recognize his authority and his power. And
An
what would you,
awareness, that we are living before God.
mm,
Whether we're believers or not.
right.
And,
And you can teach it as long as people understand, your children also understand grace, mercy, seated with the Christ on the right hand of God. And, so, but we are being transformed and disciplined, and God, wants us to do what's right in his eyes. So that's the thing you're trying to teach your children. And the hard thing is like, you know, you're trying to teach your kids things that you're still trying to learn. But
yeah.
that's what and then our children end up teaching us some of these things too. And he says, second, it's God's word is the supreme authority and supreme standard for our faith and conduct. And I don't expect teenagers necessarily to be walking around. I mean, some of them do that. I mean, there's lots of really godly, um, teenagers, but there should at least be in the back of their mind this understanding that they would know the basis of goodness and right is from God. So they just have
Sorry, I got lost.
an understanding. Do what?
Oh, so I was like, I got lost. Um, I got it. I'm back.
And on page 250, it says,
Yeah.
third. Oh, by the way, kudos on being able to pull up that picture and post it on the screen. That was a good work of technology you did, by the way.
I do what I can.
You,
Just trying to add value.
that was, I felt, added to. Third is, we teach our children moral purity of faithfulness in marriage. And everything is, by example. So you do want your kids leaving home understanding that, so
That was
You
a
want to
big
add anything?
failure in, if I could just speak for my generation, because I've had this discussion with friends of mine that I, grew up with, went to high school with. That right there, third, we must teach our children moral purity of faithfulness in marriage. Just the whole like sanctity of marriage and human sexuality stuff. The people who were teaching us when we were kids completely fumbled it.
Oh, the movies.
I'm not talking about my parents. I'm
No,
talking
no, no. I'm
about
saying
like the
like
church
even
folks completely were like, "Whoops."
yes. And I'm like the culture too. It's like, and I guess it's the popular culture. Um, if I look back at movies that I really liked when I was younger, like James Bond movies or some of the Western movies and things, and it's like, oh
Uh,
my goodness. I mean, the things that, to be a man, you're supposed to be like that. And now the way the movies teach are like, it's just, they get better. It just went in a different direction. But you're talking about the way it was taught in church,
yeah, yeah,
even.
like the whole purity movement.
Oh, so you were in
Uh,
the I Kiss Dating Goodbye thing? Was that
yes.
when you were?
Oh,
Okay, yeah.
perfect,
All
perfect. Yeah,
right.
that was huge when I was in, high school and cotton. Yeah, and you know, what was the movement? It was you signed a card and you stuck it in your wallet and
Oh, yeah,
you
and they
know,
had the purity
true love
rings.
waits, true love
True
waits.
Love Waits. That's it.
Which
And there's
like
other all these things, except they became
no,
like Just Say No programs.
it was
So
dare it
that.
was just saying no only, not to drugs but to
All right, I'll share
alcohol.
something.
Uh,
So anyway, so when I was younger, like I guess it's like they have dare programs now. Well,
yeah,
they didn't call them dare programs back in my day, but they were called something. But they would show, like, they'd have a poster and it would have drugs taped to it. Like, look, these are what drugs look like.
right.
And
There's
the marijuana,
cocaine.
the joint always was in pink wrapping paper. And then I was like, so the first time I saw one in real life, it was not in pink wrapping paper. So I was like,
Must
well,
not
it
be it.
must not be. Yeah. So, but I
It's
was
not the
scared to
real
death to do
deal.
it because I knew if I took one puff, I'd end up on a windmill somewhere in Holland somehow
Oh
because
my
of what it
goodness.
would do. But, but but, these are people that are trying to teach children right and wrong. And I
Well,
think what this is a demonstration of is when you try to teach morality on a mass consumption basis, you get weird things sometimes. But if your parents, if you're teaching your children morality, it's different. You aren't trying to. Hopefully, it's different because you're having
anyway,
conversations.
so yeah, like that's important, and trying to do that well, which is super hard.
Yeah, but he says marriage is the foundational human relationship established by God.
Agreed.
That's that even before the church is an assumed relationship between God and His people, but the human foundational relationship is families, is marriages. I mean, that's pretty amazing that he did not have to create us like He did. Like angels don't marry and procreate, but He
Right.
caused us to because to teach us something about the Trinity and His relationship with the church. All right, fourth, he says we teach our children about the sovereign mercy of God over those who keep covenant with Him. And so, that's I wrote above here. There's God sovereignly decrees things, but there's spiritual armor, there's schemes of the devil, and there's the adversary prowls about like a roaring lion, so that we have God as not only one who is in control of all things, but somehow in the fallen world, all things are not under his. He has allowed Satan power in this realm, and so he's called the prince of the power of the air. And so Satan can throw fiery darts at the believer and hates the church. And so we have spiritual armor that we're supposed to suit up with. And a part of that spiritual armor was faith and the helmet of salvation and things. But really, it's the mercy of God protecting us. And so to understand and teach your children about the sovereign mercy of God for those who are in covenant relationship with Him, for those who, are, and that's what you teach children. It's like you're members of the church. You are, been baptized. You're in this relationship with God, and by faith, that's what holds us to Him. So no matter where we go in life, no matter the things that happen to us, He's watching over us. This is how he says Daniel and his friends stood for God fearlessly, but they also showed remarkable respect to submission to human rulers as well. So it's just the idea of teaching that there's a submission to God and to human authorities. So a part of that. And then 3, he said, train teenagers in daily Bible reading, meditation, and prayer. And that's just,
that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
If you want to hear from God, spend time in His Word, praying.
Right. And 4 is rehearse resistance to peer pressure. So I thought that was kind of, a couple of things. Children are young. You tell them about, don't take rides from strangers and things. But it gives an example. He says, how should you respond if a friend says, come on, nobody will find you? Or what if you're ridiculed for being babies? I think if you use those as particular, like a script, it might be kind of odd. But if you just in conversation or when you're talking, it's like, so hey, what would you do? I mean, peer pressure is it's a lot of pressure. I mean, peer pressure is one of the, that's what causes anybody to do a lot of things that, particularly teenagers, because and when you're in those teenage years, you can have so many friends. Especially even in college age. It's like, I know when I was in college, it's like I had like just friends everywhere you look. There was just people everywhere you went. There was 30 of you or something. And but as you get older, that number declines. And I've read somewhere that it had something to do with the younger you are, you haven't defined yet who you are and what you like. And, the older you get, I like this kind of food, this kind of book, that kind of movie. But when you're high school or college, it's like, I don't know, I kind of like everything. And then everybody's liking everything. So you got people that have so much stuff in common because you haven't narrowed down your focus. So the older you get, you have less peer pressure in one way. But I think the peer pressure of a friendship group is very difficult. So that you have to, you have to be careful who you pick as friends. That's a huge thing. And I think I don't know who said it, but Glenn Beck quotes it. Says his father used to tell him that, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And I remember at one point somebody, the birds of a flock together. And I would look at some of my friends and I was like, they were doing bad things. They're like this, but I'm not. So it made me think, well, maybe I am. And then I realized it's like, okay, I am hanging out with these kids that are doing bad things. And I'm the only one in the group that's not. So it made me think, okay, I need to evaluate.
Well, he's gone. Well, while John's coming back, hopefully, I will reiterate that I completely agree, and that friends played a huge role in my life. Still do play a huge role in my life, and really, that's a good chunk of my testimony is having friends who consistently did things like invite me to church or took me to church or tried to invited me to do things with them or with their families, which were good and right and, godly. And I think of the different not just my friends, but like their dads too, and their moms that had a big influence on my life. And that's why, I talk to my kids a lot about, you know, the significance of your friends. Um, you know, obviously you hope that everybody has a, good godly family, and that they're being raised in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, and all of those things that we're called to do. But sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes got kids and friends that aren't raised in a Christian household, or aren't raised in one that is, actively Christian. And, friends who they spend their time with can radically change the course of their life. I completely believe that it was in large part the friends that God put in my life that, put me on the path that I'm on now. He used that. I'm kind of like John, if he ever comes back, that, I would sit there and go, golly, Lord, I'm really not who I think I am. I'm only this way because of the people in my life. And I kind of get down like you're faking it. Like this isn't really me. I'm just like this because of my friends, whatever the case may be. And it hit me one day, and it continues to hit me when I go down that road, is, God sort of speaking, just sort of reminding me, Christian, that's why I put those people in your life. Yes, you are the way you are because of the people in your life, but that's why they're there. And that's why, the people that you choose to spend your time with has such a massive impact on your life. So learning battlefield tactics to resist peer pressure. And this is, for all of us. But this guy, Willem Teelink, I have no idea if that's how his name is pronounced, Teellinck, who lived from 1579 to 1629, said that the world is like a three-horned monster attacking us with the horn of wrong old traditions and customs, the horn of wrong yet celebrated and very distinguished role models, and the horn of rewarding and honoring those who conform to the world, but punishing and shaming those who do not swim with the stream. This is really cool. Wrong old traditions and customs. There's some things that the culture or that our world throws at us that are just, okay, that's wrong. Like slavery, that is wrong. That was, in a time gone by, there were people who understood that as a perfectly valid way to live your life, and a perfectly valid way to treat other human beings. We look at that now and we say that's ridiculous. Obviously, chattel slavery is wrong, and there's no place for that in civilized society, and certainly Christianity. So we can, we know that's wrong. Wrong yet celebrated and very distinguished role models. And the example he gives is media, sports, academic, and entertainment celebrities. Right? Celebrities have this over. They're able to hit way above their weight class. Why people listen to celebrities is beyond me. Why celebrities think they're experts on things that they have no expertise. I mean, if I want to know how to act, like in a movie, if I want to know how to be an actor or an actress, then by golly, I'm going to check out Tom Cruise, and he's going to teach me how to be a great actor. If I want to know about politics or astrophysics or biology, that's not the place that I'm going to go. And the fact of the matter is, many of them, while fame doesn't mean that they are morally good in any way. And then rewarding and honoring those who conform to the world, but punishing and shaming those who do not swim with the stream. That's where we're at. That's That's the cancel culture that we live in right now. If you, I mean, we've seen this. I think it was just sort of brought to the forefront, from 2020 until now, the past 5 years or so. It's always been there, but past 5 years or so, like if you go against the cultural narrative and the cultural norms, then they're going to make you pay in some way or another. You're going to get called all kinds of names. You're going to, get shadow banned. You're going to get canceled. You're going to, this and that and this and that. But those of us who have said no, we're just not going to participate in these cultural things, or in this culture of idiocy. You get shouted down, you get screamed at. Like I said, you get called all kinds of names, rather than rewarding, or rather than even living by freedom of speech, whatever. Those are powerful horns, like this guy says. These are powerful means of temptation and pressure that not just our teenagers, but all of us have to face. And so we need to understand the strength of temptation. If it wasn't tempting, we wouldn't call it temptation. I say it all the time. It's not like temptation is easy to, some kinds of temptation are super easy for one person or another to resist. But each of us is liable to be tempted in different ways and have a more difficult time with different kinds of temptations. And they're very, very persuasive. And that's why we stumble and fall so often as we do. So we flee from temptation. That's what the Bible's instruction is. Run away. Just get out of there. Search, love, and know the scriptures. And this goes, right along, hand in hand with daily devotions, Bible reading. He's back, ladies and gentlemen. I was just wrapping up.
Can you hear me?
Just kidding. Yeah, I can hear you.
With an echo? Okay. Well, I
No,
can hear
no echo on my end.
It goes on my end. I can deal with it. You're doing good, though. I apologize. Technology.
That's right. Yeah, it happens.
So you were saying?
Just search on page 254, search, love, and know the scriptures goes right along with encouraging daily devotions, Bible reading, meditation, and prayer. And I've seen people, it's all over the years, I'm getting better at it. And, we've talked about this a lot, or you've talked about this a lot, that notion of hiding God's word in your heart, so you have access to it in the moment. And I have friends that, man, they're able to whip out Bible verses, no problem. Not just for like, we're getting ready to be tossed into the fiery furnace and we need something here, but just genuine, like general stuff, or being joyful or finding something amazing. Man, they're pulling out scripture verses for everything. And it's only recently that, just from the years of spending time in the Word, that I'm getting a little better at that. I still got a lot more.
Yeah, we were talking about that at I don't know, somewhere in church, and it's the idea of memorizing scripture helps with that, but it's when you have struggles and a certain verse helps you, that kind of seeps its way to your psyche, your soul, so that don't be surprised when the fiery darts come at you, as if when the fiery trial comes upon you, as if something strange is happening. Like that's one that comes up a lot because there's all these fiery trials. And I memorized one when I was teaching a youth group, which was the thief comes to steal, to kill, to destroy, but I have come that you may have life and have it abundantly. And we did that on the board, and we would, read it and then erase one of the words and try to say the whole thing, and then erase the word, and then try to say the whole thing. And that got into my memory banks, and it's amazing how much that verse comes out. And I can even tell you where it is. And I think some people get a little caught up with it. You have to know that's John 6:21, which is helpful. But they didn't write those chapters and verses when they wrote the Bible anyway. So knowing the words are important. And it goes on, he talks about, it's really on page 256. He says, find life purpose in service, not selfishness.
Yeah.
Yes, now you're telling me how it's bad. I told you. I hear
It's not an echo. It's cutting out, and it's like
you do
it's
it.
like a
Not
glitchy video, only it's just the audio.
256, number 8.
Oh, we're fast forwarding.
Yeah.
Yes. Find life's purpose in service, not selfishness. And we're locked up.
Are you locked up? Or you thought I was locked up because I wasn't talking or moving?
I was looking at the book. Yeah, I'm locked up now, but if you can still hear me, we'll proceed.
I can hear
you. Yeah, well, and that's the exact opposite of the message of the world, which is looking out for you and what's good for you, what feels good for you. Follow your heart and all that. Instead, we seek to glorify God and enjoy Him forever.
And number 6 talks about.
Oh, we're going back now.
Those who are not true friends are enemies.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's, we're called to love our enemies, but don't invite them into your closest confidences.
That is critical. And can I say just something real quick about that?
Please.
Like, we got to remember that our kids are kids. And even though they may be in a Christian household, maybe they are, baptized and communicant and professing believers in Christ, they are kids. And I believe it is the acme of foolishness to use them when we throw them to the wolves and then act like, oh, they're being missionaries.
Throw them to the wolves and then act like they're missionaries.
I just, like, they're still kids. And yes, we just have to be careful. Like, of course, you want to be able to reach out to non-believing friends and all of that. But when we're basically putting the burden on them as if they are spiritually mature enough to like sort through all of that of interacting with non-believers on a deep level, I think that's dangerous. Like, I think we need to guard our kids' friendships. And again, like, I'm going to be misunderstood. People are going to be like, well, what are you? You don't want your kids to talking to non-believers? How? That's terrible. That's not what I mean.
No, you don't let them drive cars until they're capable.
Right.
And so there's certain people that you may need to protect your children from until they are able to protect themselves from them.
I mean, you're asking them to do something that even mature Christians struggle to do effectively.
Right.
And that's not fair to them. That's not fair to anybody. And it's just dangerous.
Right.
But there's a way to do it right. Again, like, I can't emphasize enough, I'm not saying you don't evangelize. Of course you do. Of course you want your kids to be a good influence on non-believers. I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for parents allowing their believing kids to have an influence on me. But those relationships were shepherded.
Right.
like, because I was the dangerous one.
Well, one thing growing up too, I had a lot of older friends, and that was
Yeah.
difficult. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Um, Older friends are hard to lead, and if you don't follow your older friends, they will leave you behind and call you names. That's
Yeah.
like it's too much for children, and so those. I mean, I don't blame my parents, but they did the best they could do. But there could have been a little better shepherding over who I was allowed to spend a lot of time with away from home and anybody else. The thing about older children is they have more freedom,
Mm-hmm.
and older teenagers have more freedom. So I think a lot of times parents feel guilty for judging other people, and so they let their children hang around people who they don't trust as well. I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, but and again, when you think about it in using some of the biblical analogies that the Gospels give us, like a shepherd doesn't feel bad about denying a wolf entry into the sheep pen.
And it may be another child, a teenager isn't necessarily a wolf, but
Right.
they don't have the same values. I mean, in that sense, there's a wolfishness to them. But and I just so when your generation, my parents' generation grew up watching Leave It to Beaver.
Mm-hmm.
There was the character Eddie Haskell. Are you familiar with Eddie Haskell?
I don't think I've ever once watched an episode of Leave It to Beaver. I mean, I know what it is, but I don't
So
think I've ever
Eddie
watched it.
Haskell in front of the parents was the best kid there was, and everybody loved it. Yes,
Oh,
Mrs. Leaver. Yes, Mister. And then, but he was the instigator.
yeah.
He was the bad guy, and he wasn't, but so bad. But he's the one trying to get people in trouble. So you have to be careful with that as well. All right. Well, I think I'm losing my our technological feed, and maybe we've said what needs to be said. Do you want to read, unless there's a closing thoughts?
Now let me hold tight. I gotta find our Esther last week, so now we're in. Oh boy, this ought to be good.
So we do it. The next book, random verse out of context,
Yeah.
chapter 9, verse 8, because we try to start at 9:08 each night.
So it's Job,
Job 9:8.
who alone stretched out the heavens and trampled the waves of the sea.
See, that is that the whole verse?
Yeah, you don't even get a full sentence.
Uh, who alone
Stretched out the heavens and trampled the waves of the sea.
trampled the way, and then Jesus walks on water.
Oh yeah.
Wow, that's neat. Sometimes these are the context verses. Well, you come to it with a context. So, all right, Christian. Well, thank you. I'll go through this and see what kind of editing we can do, and buy us
Sorry.
laptops, and we'll figure out what happens.
Some of our countless fans.
Some of our what?
Countless fans.
Yeah, I mean, there's thousands of people that are struggling. All right, man. God bless.
Later on.